Coming up on the Booth Review, the Commanders were back in a big way, London.
Dominated performance by the entire team.
And you got to hand out that belt. I know who the crowd wants.
We'll see. Does Terry get it, or does the defending champion, Dante Fowler, retain his belt?
There was a lot of good candidates for that. On the Booth Review, coming up next. Welcome to the Booth Review podcast, presented by Microsoft Surface, powering a better game. I'm Bram Whiteside with Big Fletch, London Fletcher. It's been a while. We won.
We won.
Won big. Won big against Tennessee.
Man, how good does it feel to be doing this Booth Review, coming off a victory? Just an outstanding performance all around, and the way they did it. It's one thing to win, and we want to win all games, but how they looked in that victory.
Yeah.
I think you and I, we were all just ecstatic seeing the way that team performed in every facet of the game, except, there's some issues we'll talk about that we can do better on, but we're going to talk about how great the offense looked, how great the defense looked, and how great the team looked in general heading into the bye week.
I'll go back through the whole thing. I think largely I kind of feel like this was the first time they looked like the early season version of themselves that I think was surprising then. And then people went through, this is how long NFL seasons are. People then go through this, well, where was that? Yeah. They never expected it in the first place. Now they've seen it, and now they go, well, where was that? And it showed up again. But I think one of the big things that happened during the week, which became really relevant to the whole story of the week, was Bobby Wagner spoke to the team.
Yeah.
And this is probably not uncommon. Leaders of the team step up at certain points of the season. And I think we can all agree, whether they'll be willing to say this or not, they had to win yesterday. I mean, you couldn't go into the bye on a 4-game losing streak when you were 7-2 and feel good about making the playoffs. I think this felt like a must-win. And I don't want to speak for Bobby, but it sounds like there was part of him going, hey, we got a good team here. Let's get this thing back on track. So just before I want to play the interaction that you had with him in the locker room, because a lot's been made of obviously the milestone he made and the milestone that you've set and the standard that you set. But what did you just make first of Bobby speaking to the team last week?
I thought it was great, and it's a testament to him as a leader. When you go through adversity during the season, and you're going to have adversity during seasons, you're going to have adversity during games, but how can you get yourself out of it? Bobby recognized and realized, hey, we're on a 3-game losing streak. There's a lot of naysayers, a lot of negativity being talked about this football team. Maybe they're not that good, but for him to, a guy who's a former Super Bowl champion, he's been in a lot of wars, been in multiple NFC championship games, multiple playoff games, him saying, you know what, hey, guys, let's block out all the outside noise. We're still an excellent football team. We take care of our business. We play like we're capable of playing. We can go out and dominate teams. And so for him to go to Dan Quinn and say, hey, Coach, let me talk to him. And we talked about this in our interview with DQ. The coach, teams can kind of tune a coach out because his message is constant and you're hearing it all the time. But when you have a player and players deliver a message and hold each other accountable, it just hits different. It hits differently, and for Bobby to do that, that's a testament to who he is as a leader, who he is as a player.
You won a Super Bowl. Did that happen in your locker room?
Oh, yeah.
Because you guys, not unlike what Washington's done this year offensively for periods of time, you guys had a consistently greatest show on turf. There must have been hard periods, though.
Yeah. During both of the seasons that we ended up going to the Super Bowl, I would say definitely the first one where we're still kind of learning who we are as a team, learning how to win, similar to this year's team. We started the season off 6-0. We're rolling, clicking on all cylinders. And we go to Tennessee, ironically, and lose to the Titans in Nashville. And then we lose to the Detroit Lions. We gave up a 4th and, 20 type play that could have won the game. So we got a 2-game losing streak. Same old sorry Rams is kind of now being a narrative. They've come back to reality. And we had to have some, conversations and realize, okay, who are we? And then we end up rolling again, not losing another game to the end of the season where, last regular season game we had everything clinched up, pull started, stuff like that. But we had a 2-game losing streak during that season, but we had to have some conversation.
Obviously, Bobby has weight in the room because it's funny, when we were talking to Dan Quinn after the game yesterday, he even said sometimes this doesn't go well when a player steps up and speaks, and it's either not their strength or they don't get the message right. Clearly, it worked for whatever Bobby said.
And one thing that he said Bobby doesn't talk all the time. Probably all the time to the team.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know him well, but like he seems actually a very reserved personality for someone who's been as accomplished as he is.
Yeah, so I'm sure he talks to the defense all the time. But in terms of addressing the team and really addressing the team in that manner, if you don't do it all the time and then for you to come on and say, hey, it's time for me to talk and address the team, just the awareness of him understanding where they're at in their season. And, Coach, I got you. Yeah. Teams and players, they respect him first and foremost. Before he made one single play on his team, one tackle, whatever the case may be, as soon as he signed with this team, he automatically had respect, equity built up because of all the things he had accomplished in his career prior to signing with us. So he already has their ear. But then when he delivers that message, and it's one thing to deliver a message and not hold up your end of the bargain. He delivers a message and he holds up his end of the bargain by his play.
You know, like what signaled to me that this was going to be different, and I didn't know how this would work out this year, was his signing. Because this isn't messy to the MLS, right? He wants to win. He didn't come here out of charity. He came here by choice. Probably could have retired if he really wanted to. He'd never played on the East Coast. So when he signed here, it signaled something to me that he actually believes in this coaching staff. Whether he knew what was here and what was in front of him, I don't know. But that was, to me, the most significant veteran signing that was made. He didn't have to do this. He probably had other offers. And when he signed here, it meant something, at least to me, about what was being built here.
And absolutely, Bram. And he has two daughters that are still out on the West Coast. So for him to come all the way across the country, be away from his daughters, which, we're parents, and, man, we want to see our kids every single day. And for him not to say, you know what, I believe in what they're doing in Washington. I believe in Dan Quinn. I believe in Ken Norton Jr. I believe in what they're building in Washington. I'm going to go all the way across the country, leave my daughters all the way on the West Coast. That says a lot to what how he felt about this situation.
Yeah, and here we are, week 13. He's already surpassed 100 tackles. So he's brought the standard of play with him. This is a position that was weak for this team for a number of years. He solidified that, even at the advanced stage of his career. And obviously everybody knows by now, like, he's done this now 13 years in a row. The only other player in this millennium that has done it longer consecutively is you. And I thought we had a really, really cool moment last night because I thought the team pointing this out was great that they did that to allow him to kind of get the shine for doing what he did yesterday. But having him with you in the locker room afterwards was really an amazing moment. So take a listen to this. All right, back in the locker room with Bobby Wagner. You reached 100 tackles for the 13th consecutive season. There's only one other player that's done it longer. The guy standing next to you, London Fletcher. So let me just start with you. Like, what does a milestone like that mean to you?
It means a lot. Wearing this jersey, being able to represent somebody like this and standing next to me, is really cool. So I'm grateful for this. It's really cool, but I'm really grateful for him because I don't remember when I reached out to him, but I kind of just reached out to him, and I wasn't sure what I was going to get or anything. I'm a random person, just randomly reaching out, but, he showed me so much love, gave me so much advice, whether to take care of my body, whether, how to play the game, and I'm really grateful, and he's, definitely the reason why I'm here.
Yeah, Bobby, as he mentioned, this was probably, I think it was 2014, almost 10 years ago, man, that he reached out to me, didn't know him, but just wanted to pick my brains. And I was actually humbled because he was so accomplished at that time. And he's like, hey, but him having enough respect of the guys who played before him, like, I know I can still add to my game. One thing about you, we knew coming over about the great leadership, but one thing that I'm always pointing out is the productivity. Yeah, the leadership is great, but you're still playing at an extremely high level. How are you able to continue to play at this high level?
Man, it's just taking care of your body. Honestly, like, I'm just remember the conversation because You know, he never missed any games in his career, and I'm like, damn, how does somebody do that? And he gave me so much advice, and I just try to implement stuff that he did. Like, I don't know if you remember, but you talked about running on the sand, so I started running on the sand.
Yeah.
It was a lot of things that he said. He probably didn't even know I was writing stuff down. So I'm like, if he, is able to play a long time at this position without being hurt or anything like that, I was going to do it. So I was just trying to listen and just let you know that I listen.
So you and Bobby got to share that moment last night. And as I learned from you, this relationship kind of started years ago.
It did. And back in 2019, I'd been retired, for 6 seasons then. And Bobby just code DM me on Twitter. It's X now. And
Did he even get your number?
Well, so he didn't have my number. And we had played against each other in the 2012 playoffs. He was a rookie that year, and I didn't know him. And just over the course of the years, watching this game, watching him play, like, man, this dude's a hell of a football player, and had a tremendous amount of respect for his game and the way he played, and appreciation for him. And he reached out to me and say, hey, London, love to pick your brain and chop it up with you to see how you were so successful. And for him to do that, especially for former players, when a younger guy reaches out to us, I mean, that means the world to us, because something, he's like, man, this guy recognizes. Like, I did the same thing to Sam Mills that Bobby did to me. I had somebody who had connections to Sam Mills. They put me in contact with him. So for me, it was almost just like a full circle moment, being able to give back to Bobby the way that Sam had poured into me. And so it just this was 5 years ago, and we had several conversations, and just kind of sharing what I felt like helped me improve and what I thought could help him improve. It's just talked about. He asked a bunch of questions. He asked, how did I train? How did I take care of myself? I was sharing with him, my recovery stuff, my training during the off season, things that I added to my training and my repertoire too, especially as I got older in my career, to help me play at a higher level. We talked coverages. We talked cover 4 to quarters coverage, which at that point in time, I think the Seahawks was playing a lot of quarters coverage, and I had a lot of experience playing that coverage, and I was just talking to him about that. It's funny because last year when we played the Seahawks, I ran into him, and that was the first time meeting him in person when we were out there. And
So you guys had talked a lot, but you'd never actually.
We had never met in person. Yeah, we never met in person until last year in Seattle when we played. And I talked to him prior to the game, and we talked quarters coverage again on the field. And I told him, I was like, man, you got to make sure you invite me to your Hall of Fame ceremony. And as crazy as it is, now he's a Washington Commander.
Well, if he's going to get to 14, which is your record, he's got to resign.
Yeah,
and
they
he's on a 1-year deal.
I'd be trying to extend him now. Just
assuming he wants to play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
And again, being away from your daughters, being that far away, it can wear on you. So I'm sure he'll take his time and really get through the emotions of the season and kind of say, do I want to do it again? I mean, he's still playing at an elite level, high level. They need to re-sign him. I'll say this, man. We knew what he was going to bring it from a leadership standpoint. But what people underestimated and overlooked was what he was bringing and what he has brought from a production standpoint. He's still playing at an elite level.
Yeah, he is. And I really appreciated him. I don't think he said it during our interview, but I remember he said it during the media scrum after the game that you should be in the Hall of Fame. And that, I think everyone assumes that he's going to be in the Hall. They talk about it that way.
Yeah.
Like they assume that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame, whether it's first ballot or not. And I agree with that. Go watch the guy's careers.
Yeah.
A champion. He's done it with this kind of level of production.
Right.
I mean, like, there's no question.
Pro Bowls.
You were him too. It's why he called you.
Yeah.
So, I hope that they listen. This is the second time now in a year. Devin Hester got the jacket, walked up on the stage, and said Brian Mitchell should be in the Hall of Fame. I wholeheartedly agree with that. He should be.
Yep,
He's
absolutely.
the standard bearer of that position. And now that kick returns are back, maybe people will start thinking about it differently. When you see things that Cavante Turpin's doing, people like that, you get to see what kind of impact he had. You had this impact at that position too. It's an oversight, and I'm hoping that it's going to get changed.
Yeah,
soon.
and what I loved about what Devin did, and B. Mitch has been retired for, I don't know, almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
For Devin to recognize what B. Mitch meant to the return game, and Devin bringing him into the forefront during Devin's moment, recognizing and still being humble enough and saying, you know what, Brian Mitchell should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. With Bobby, becoming 13 consecutive tackles, 100 tackle seasons, and me being in the mix keeps me relevant. Him talking about me and saying I should be in the Hall of Fame. There's a respect there, and it's for B. Mitch, myself, we truly appreciate when guys come up and acknowledge what we did before them in the same way like we acknowledge the guys who did it before us.
Yeah. I mean, even in my field, the second I got the job calling the games for this team, the first thing I did was call all the major broadcasters that I respect that would listen to me. Because I just wanted to hear their experiences.
Yeah.
I called the local ones that I, admired, Joe Beninati, Steve Buckhantz, John Walton, I'm going to miss some names, Johnny Holiday. I called them all and said, what can you tell me about this experience? And every time I see someone like Ian Eagle or Mike Tirico or anybody, I talk to them. I want to know. And it sounds like you've done the same thing here, that it's through the years, knowledge is power. Like knowing what the people did before you to get to where they were is everything. And it sounds like you passed it down to him. And I'll bet he'll do the same for the Fred Warners of the world or the great middle linebackers who are out there.
Yeah,
now,
and he probably has already done it.
Yeah.
For current players, you're a young linebacker, young football player in general, and you're not reaching and tapping into the brains of these guys who've done it for a multitude of years, you're missing out.
Yeah, you're missing the education of it. All right, let's get to the game. So it worked. Like whatever he said, whatever the mood was, I thought the crowd was into it really big time. Flags were good. I think we liked the flags.
Yeah, we did.
Flags went well. Flags got going. The vibe was right. The opening drive, they had 2 penalties immediately. Defensively, got a very quick stop. They were in a hole immediately. Washington gets the ball, walks down the field, scores a touchdown immediately. Like what Dan Quinn was talking about, and I've cited this with the game with you. He is omniscient somewhat. Sometimes you hear coaches say things, and to your point earlier, or like sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other. When he says certain things, I take note of it. And last week, late in the week, he said the adversity was good for the team, which is one way to put it. And then he said, you're going to see what's on the other side because there's another thing coming here. And we saw the team that we saw earlier in the season show up immediately. Yeah. I mean, and I felt it, and I know you felt it too, and the scoreboard showed it very quickly. That was the best start to a game we've had in years.
Best start, and you mentioned that on the broadcast, and you're watching, the defense get the 3 and out, and then B-Rob break off that 40-yard run. He's like, oh, my goodness. And then you get the turnovers and all the things that happen. And it's like, Dan knows his football team. He said something was coming.
He's got the pulse.
He has the pulse. And a lot of times you can sense that based on the practice, based on the meetings. You can feel the energy of, man, these guys are really focused. These guys are pissed off. These guys are ready to rock. They're ready to go out there and play great football. And he knows his football team, and we saw that on full display yesterday.
Yeah, and he had said basically, I think some of this was they didn't like the way they started with the energy against Dallas.
Yeah, he mentioned that. Yeah,
all of the missed opportunities. We talked about this last week. Like they had a block kick, a block punt, a missed field goal, and a fumble recovery, and had 3 points at halftime. That's on you. I mean, they made some of those plays happen, obviously. 2 of them were they blocked a kick, they blocked a punt, and they got a fumble. But the complimentary side of it was the energy wasn't there across the board. He didn't like that. He always consistently says, you're going to like how we get down, not certain portions of it, how we do it. And this was a full throttle team effort here that started this game against Tennessee, and it was an avalanche.
What I also saw was it's from an offensive standpoint, them being on attack, them dictating the terms of the agreement. I talk all the time, especially on the Players Club podcast, which you can check out on our YouTube channel as well. It's dictating the terms of the agreement, especially your big guys, your guys in the trenches, not negotiating with terrorists. We don't make peace treaties. This is the type of stuff I talk about. And it's really about being in attack mode. The offense came out in attack mode, getting the ball to Terry, really establishing a physical presence in the run game. And they were moving people off the line of scrimmage. In Tennessee, they're number 8 ranked run defense in the National Football League. Number 1 against the pass. And this was a tough team. Yeah, their record was not great, but from a defensive standpoint, you watched them on film, looking at them, I watched them. I was like, man, this could be a tough ball game for us. And the way that offense came out and performed, the way that offensive line set a physical tone, the way they protected Jayden, the way he was able to distribute the football, it was a full-out attack mode. Maybe against the Cowboys, I didn't necessarily see us in full attack mode the way we.
I think that's what Dan Quinn was talking about.
Yeah, I didn't see us
feel the energy.
Yeah, feel us in attack mode, and sometimes you can kind of, I won't say respect the opponent a little bit too much, but you got to realize and say, hey, we're some badasses too. They got to fear us and respect us too.
Dallas dominated the line of scrimmage against them.
They did.
They did.
Yep.
Osa Odigizua had a terrific game. Micah Parsons was in the backfield over and over. There were very good timed rushes against them. That did not happen against a defense that's statistically better than the one that they faced a week ago. I walked in going, I don't know if they're going to run the ball effectively. I know they're going to be consistent on it because the coaches had told me they were going to stick with it. But with B-Rob coming off the ankle, it was hard to know what condition he was going to really be in. Austin Eckler obviously wasn't going to be able to play, and the offensive line had been beat up, and Andrew Wiley wasn't playing. Like, I didn't expect them to run the ball effectively. I expected them to run the ball a lot, but I didn't expect them to do what they did. To have 267 on the ground is a real testament to B-Rob's fine, and secondarily, the offensive line really took what happened personally. They're the group that took it really personally. This was the closest thing to the early part of the season we saw from them collectively to control the line of scrimmage that way.
No, you're absolutely right about the offensive line taking it personally. And when you have a bad game, which, I mean, they had a bad game against the Tennessee Titans. It was not their best brand of football. And you're not happy with the way you performed. A lot of guys that, have played well for us during the season just didn't have good games on from the offensive line standpoint, and those guys they had to sit on that for a week, and I'm sure they was like, you know what, I don't want to feel like that again, and we're gonna show the Tennessee Titans what we saw against the Dallas Cowboys. That's not us. What we saw during the game against the Philadelphia Eagles. That's not us. So you go out and you set a physical tone. You mentioned B-Rob. I thought with him showing up and practicing on Wednesday's practice, you and I were out at the practice during the open availability, and when I saw B-Rob out there taking handoffs, I was shocked, first and foremost, that he was on the football field because, he wasn't able to finish the game Sunday against the Cowboys. You had to assume, like, is he going to be able to play? This will have to be something we monitor towards the end of the week. But for him to not miss a practice, and he was limited a little bit, but for him to be out there, that also sent a message to his team saying, hey, guys, I'm here for you. I'm ready to fight. I'm not missing this game. We're in a 3-game losing streak. I'm going to be out there. I may not be 100%, but I'm going to give you everything I got. And that went a long way to me. Just watching him out on that practice field, I'm like, man, this he gets it, and that's going to resonate too.
Yeah, I think we talked earlier about Bobby Wagner, right? And so he spoke up. He said something. I think he leads by example mainly. Like to everyone's point, like he doesn't do that very often. He did it, but he felt it was necessary. I think B-Rob's similar. I don't feel like he's the most talkative guy. He's not going to stand up, speak his mind all that often, but he's going to show you by example, and you're seeing this. I know it killed him to miss those games earlier this year. In a couple of occasions, they held him out for what they thought was in his own best interest to not harm himself. He didn't like that. So and I think we all know this, and Quinn has said this B-Rob, when he's going, there's an emotional lift to the way he plays.
Oh, yeah.
It's just the way he plays. I describe it as gas in the tank.
Yeah.
Like, he finishes runs. He embodies, I think, what they want in their players here. He is tough. And when he's coming at you, especially in the second half with a lead, nobody wants anything to do with it.
Yeah. 16 carries, over 100 yards. Then C-Rob.
That's an amazing story.
Chris Rodriguez. He finished that game, man. He 13 carries, 94 yards?
He wasn't on the roster a week ago.
I know.
He's been called up and down multiple times. Practice squad roster. Had a very good game in New York. Remember, he played in that one.
Finished that out.
Finished that one out, right? He was off the roster.
Mm-hmm.
Then Austin Eckler gets hurt. It was logical to call him back, bring him back in. You got to wonder, like, where is someone's head when they go up and down on the roster all year long? Well, he showed up for this team on Sunday, too, and really finished the game out. Physical running up the middle of the field.
Physical running, man. We're watching those Tennessee Titans defenders just bounce off of C-Rob, man. I love the kid. I love watching him. I really liked watching him a season ago. You look at him coming out of Kentucky. Didn't know a whole lot about him. Kentucky football, you think more basketball when you think Kentucky. But watching him once we drafted him, looking at his film, like loved how he finished his runs, just powered back. Then this year, he was on our active roster all year. This year had to, didn't make the 53 out of training camp, on the practice squad. Gets caught up, as you mentioned, bouncing back and forth. Him even giving up his jersey number to Marshawn Lattimore. Like, man, I don't need any money. Here, you can have this. You've accomplished so much. So his humility and Chris, man, just I'm so happy for him to have the type of game that he had and being able to play the way he played.
The numbers are stunning. I mean, the time of possession, they doubled them in time of possession.
Yeah.
They had 29 first downs. They had 463 total yards. And I know people look at the record and they think, well, they just beat a bad team. That team's a number 2 defense in the NFL. Mm-hmm. They had given up 106 rush yards per game at 4 yards per carry. Washington had surpassed that by the end of the first quarter against them. This is without their right tackle, with a beat-up offensive line, and a running back that we weren't sure was going to play, and their second-best running back on IR, right? So, like, this is, to me, the best offensive performance, I don't know by far, because I'd say the Cincinnati one and the Arizona ones are worth looking back at, but those feel like a year ago now, considering where we are in the season. This is reminiscent of that. And I would argue it's the best offensive performance of the season.
You won't get an argument from me on that. I think when you put in context, coming off a 3-game losing streak, going into this game, and how the offense had performed during this 3-game losing streak, not clicking on all cylinders, not being the high-powered offense we had grown accustomed to for the majority of the season. Also, going against a Titans defense that was so stout against the run, so stout against the pass, highly regarded throughout the NFL, and how many problems they cause for offenses. When you add all those 3 things together, I think it was the best offensive performance of the season.
Yeah. Jayden, 25 of 30. So this is the first time since that early part of the season that he's over 80% completion. He had over 90 against Cincinnati, so it's hard to kind of compare that one. That was
and it was on Monday Night Football on the road.
That was the one when we might have a unicorn on this team, like when they did that. Then he turned around and had the game against Arizona. He was completing over 80% of his throws through the first month of the season, which was really unprecedented and historic. And we were kind of talking about he might be the best rookie quarterback ever because that's how his season actually started. This was reminiscent of that, which leads me to believe the rib injury was significant. It hindered him. He said nothing about it. He never used it as an excuse. He listened to people talk about it. And kind of like B-Rob, he let his actions speak louder than his words because the last 2 weeks, he is clearly healthier, feeling like himself, moving like he did early in the season. And yesterday, pinpoint accurate again, with the exception of 1 or 2 throws the one that was a little high to Ertz that ended up getting intercepted, and one or two other misses. But again, he was back to where he was, which leads me to believe he played significantly hurt for probably about a month.
Oh yeah, yeah. You have a rib injury, especially the one like he had. It's not a, hey, you have 1 week, between the injury and all of a sudden you're fine. Those rib injuries, I've dealt with them several times in my career. It's 4 to 6 weeks that you're dealing with that. You have trouble sleeping, breathing, laughing, all that type of stuff. It constantly hurts. And yeah, you'll get better. I won't even say day by day, maybe week by week you'll get better, but you won't be fully functional and totally healed. Especially he was continuing to play, continuing to take hits in that area. He's the position he plays, he's going to be exposed to. His ribs are going to be exposed because of him, the position that he plays. So he may have suffered slight setbacks in terms of from a healing standpoint. You get hit again, that may set you back a couple of days from a healing process. So you see the difference that from the electricity in his legs, the way he's moving,
Yeah.
the way he's throwing and stepping into his throws, stuff like that. You definitely know that that 10 days off between the game against the Eagles and the Cowboys, he definitely needed that and appreciated that rest.
We were saying it before the Pittsburgh game. This team needed a bye. Like, you could just tell. Like, they needed it. And
They've been rolling a long time, man.
That's why that stretch was so difficult that they hit. Two really, really good teams. Pittsburgh is probably going to win their division. Philadelphia, who probably is, we need them to go on some kind of losing streak that they don't look like they're intending to do at this point.
They might be the number.
They might be the top.
They might end up being the number one seed in the NFC.
Yes, that's very possible right now that they're going to end up that way. Those are the teams we played in a 4-day span, one of them on the road, with a team that needed a bye and was beat up, including the quarterback, who was still injured. We got to the other side of it. The Dallas one is hard to take because I think it's the one that got away from them. But it was the sign that Jayden is starting to look like the guy that we saw early in the season. It manifested again yesterday. He looked like that quarterback at the beginning of the year. And now with an extra week off now, it's what really gives me the hope that a late season run is about to begin. If he's going to play like this, they're going to be extraordinarily difficult to beat.
No, without a doubt. And you mentioned the game against the Steelers, game against the Eagles. Pittsburgh, what's their record now? 9-2, 9-3?
9-3.
Lose to them by 1 point. Had still a controversial spot. Controversial spot,
a jump off side. Otherwise, they would have got the ball back.
Yeah.
Right?
So there's the thing. And then the Philly game, it's a, 12-10 game. Middle of the fourth quarter, we go for it on that fourth and 2.
They had a bad 3-minute stretch.
Yeah, so
yes,
that could end up being a different type of ball different outcome. So we've gone toe-to-toe with two of the best teams in the NFL.
They did with Baltimore too.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the Dallas loss, considering what Dallas's record was, and I'll say this, Dallas is better than what their record indicates as well. They're 5-7 right now. They're a better football team.
They won 36 games in 3 years. That's a good roster.
Yeah.
They have a lot of injuries. They're very different. They started getting some people back on defense. I do feel like, though, no excuses. That's the one that got away this year. Of the losses they've had this year, that's the one that got away.
Especially when you look at all of the opportunities we had in the first half of that game. With the turnovers, the field position, and all
that
those
team's going home with their tail between their legs if you get up on them early, because that's what's happened to them over the previous 5 weeks.
It's a 28-7 game like we had against the Tennessee Titans if we take advantage of the opportunities.
I agree. All right, two other people on offense I want to talk about. One is Cliff Kingsbury, because he spent the week listening to that. These guys, they got to stop telling us they don't listen to outside noise. Yes, they do, okay? Yes, they do. Stop lying. You know you do, because the narratives popped up on him. Everyone looked back at the records that occurred in Arizona, right, where annually in December there's a dip in the offense.
Yes.
This is a different quarterback at a different place with a different team. No offense to Kyler Murray. Like, just because, and the dip was not as prominent as people were making it out to be, but they saw, what they didn't see was the unprecedented stuff that was happening early, right? Which there was no chance on earth that that was going to continue at that rate. But because it wasn't as good, there was a narrative that was built.
Right.
Don't tell me he didn't hear this, because all of a sudden, Terry's moving around, Jayden's looking good, he's in his bag, starting with all of these secondary targets again, and the offense looked really different this week.
Here, I'm gonna squash something. Let you all on a little known secret. We hear those things. We definitely hear those things. You can't help but hear, because either you're gonna hear it personally, or somebody who's close to you is gonna let you know what's being said. You'll hear those criticism, and we all have egos. We want to be viewed as some of the best of what we do. We don't want our work criticized. And it was just like, hey, it just made sense where let's move Terry around. Let's figure out how to get him the football in. And it's not just about Terry. I think when you move him around, that opens up other guys. That opens up the offense. That's the Where's Waldo type of scenario that we used to have when we were playing, like a Jason Witten or T.O. or somebody like that. Like, when he lines up in certain different places, what does that mean? Antenna should go up. So it was interesting. Very first play of the game, Terry lines up on the right side. They throw him a quick hitch. It was like, okay. So Cliff heard.
We heard you.
He was in the slot. They lined him up in the slot. They lined him up at number 3 on the right side. They lined him up in a bunch of different places. The touchdown that he caught, the second touchdown he caught, on the right side, goes in motion deep over, and he was the third read on that play. But again, moving him around.
Yeah, moving him around. So for Kingsbury too, I don't know where you were on the unlocking Terry part of it, but where I landed on it going in was earlier in the season. What was really telling about the offense was how they were executing. But the ball was, and I thought it was really interesting when Jayden Daniels was asked about Terry McLaurin going into the game. And he basically just shrugged and said, listen, he's a great player. We know that. But I'm going to put the ball where the defense basically tells me to put the ball, right? I'm not just going to force it to anybody. If the defense says you got to throw it here, well, that's where I'm going to throw it. That's what you want your quarterback to do. This one then went back to Cliff, where we go, all right, then you need to scheme it up to where the defense wants you to throw it to Terry or demands you to throw it to Terry. And secondarily, what was lost to me, I know lost is the wrong word, but like what had changed was some of the secondary targets. Olamide Zaccheaus really comes to mind with this. De'Ami Brown, to a certain degree, Luke McCaffrey, their targets were way down, like over the last month. To me, to unlock Terry, the offense needed to be as diverse as it was earlier in the season, and the defenses needed to take those guys, I think, more seriously than they had over the last few weeks. So some of this I thought was moving Terry around, and some of it was, if you're going to try to take Terry away, we're going to hurt you with somebody else. That's where I had landed on it.
No, you're right about that. I like, especially with a young quarterback, for Jayden to say, hey, the defense is going to dictate where I go with the football. You don't want to have a young quarterback getting in a situation where you're telling them, hey, throw this ball here, throw this ball here, throw this ball here, because that's when you get into a situation where you're turning the football over, you're having incompletions, things like that. So that's the right messaging to have with a young quarterback. Now, you played Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, some of the seasoned quarterbacks they've been in the trenches, been in these battles, and they can say, hey, I know the coverage is saying, hey, I should go over here, but I know how to manipulate the defense to go to Marvin Harrison. I know how to get to a Randy Moss. I can do some things to manipulate the coverage, stuff like that. He's a young quarterback. He's not to that level yet. I'll say this, though. You talk about the targets. Those guys also had to win more and take advantage of the opportunities, catch the football when it was thrown to them, because, again, if they're producing, it's going to help the offense in general. Those guys, during the stretch, they weren't playing at the level that they needed to play at.
It was interesting, too, like all the narratives on Cliff, like going into the game, if you looked at them, they're still a top 10 offense in yards. They were top 5 in scoring, number 3 in total points, and people were asking a question like, what's wrong with the offense? And I'm sitting there going, what's wrong with the offense? Like, it hasn't been as good as it was. It took a dip for a few weeks. The quarterback was hurt. The offensive line was beat up. They were missing people every single week. These guys are all on the injury list. B-Rob missed games. No kidding, they're not scoring 40 points a game right now. Like, give it a minute, right? And so I was actually happy for Cliff because I know he was hearing it, and that everybody, makes up this narrative that what happened in Arizona is going to happen here. And I was happy for him that it turned out the way that it did yesterday as well.
Hey, man, it's time. It's time.
You want to give out the belt?
Yeah, it's time for the belt, man.
Yeah, time for the belt.
It's time for the belt, man. It's time.
I think we've already kind of hinted who it might be going to.
Did we really?
Yeah.
All right. It's been a while since we've given out the belt. Okay. Big Fletcher's Heavyweight Commanders Championship belt. And we only give this out during wins. And the reigning champion, guy who still had the belt, was Dante Fowler. That was so long ago, man. I don't even remember what game was that he even got the belt in. It was
a month ago?
Yeah. We'll figure that out later. But the contender is going to be Terry McLaurin. It was a couple guys that I thought about as from a contender standpoint. Jayden was up for consideration in that.
The offensive line as a group.
B-Rob was in consideration. I even thought about Chris Rodriguez. Defensively, Dante Fowler. Okay. He had, in the ball game, 2 tackles, 1 TFL. He had a sack, and then the NFL ended up taking it away from him. We'll see what happens, whether they're going to give him that sack or not. And if he does, that can change some things. However, and I'll say this about Fowler. He had an impact on 2 plays right after the interception where he helped keep the Titans offense at bay. I mean, he made some tremendous plays. The challenger, Terry McLaurin. 8 receptions on 8 targets, 73 yards, 2 touchdowns.
I think the fans agree with you here too because they were chanting his name from quarter 1 yesterday. It was like Mike Tyson walking in that fight with Jake Paul. The Terry chants that were going on.
So the fans, they knew they were on to something. So with that being said, and new Big Fletch Commanders Heavyweight Champion, Terry. We got a new belt.
He deserves
We got a new champion.
8 catches on 8 targets.
Yes.
Right. 73 yards, 9.1 average, 2 touchdowns. I did the math on him. Like, he hadn't had more than 6 targets in a game in about 7-8 weeks. And I think to the point of, like, getting him going early, in 3 of the last 4 coming into this game, he had 2 targets or less in 3 of the last 4.
Yeah.
So they had to get him going. He's their best playmaker. You have to get him going.
They had to. And think about Terry, man. He's so just humble. Most number 1 receivers, him and Santana Moss I've been around a lot of number 1 receivers. Those guys are just, like, they don't complain. They don't go to the offensive coordinator. They're not yelling at their quarterback. Like, you've seen it. We've all seen it where on a TV copy, they'll show a receiver slamming his helmet on the ground, being demonstrative, showing up their quarterback, showing up the offensive coordinator, showing up the receivers coach. Hey, give me the ball. I'm open, cussing out everybody. Those 2 guys be number 1 guys. They don't do that. Yeah. And Terry hasn't complained about, games whether he only had 1 target, 2 targets, whatever the case may be. He just wants to win football games, and he knows, he can impact games. So happy for him.
I want to go back to the crowd for a moment because they were as locked in as I remember. Like, they knew the storylines.
Right.
They wanted Terry to get the ball early. The second he got it, they're chanting his name. They came and brought it on the first possession and caused 2 false start penalties against Tennessee. They knew that this team needed to start better. They were part of it. They were a 12th man yesterday, for sure.
They were. The energy of the crowd, you think a game like this just goes to show a year ago, 2 years, 3 years ago, that stadium would have been half empty. So for the fans to be out in droves to come out and support the team the way they supported the team and realizing and saying, hey, we need to help cheer our team to victory. Impact, as you mentioned, the 2 false start penalties that the Tennessee Titans had to start their drive up. They went from 1st and 10. They were 2nd and 3rd and 20.
It was like 3rd and 22,
3rd and 22
on the first drive.
Yeah, so
And then they classically lost their minds. I mean, I know the thing snowballed on them, but Tony Pollard had 8 carries, which I don't know if you've watched us play this year, but that's on you guys to figure out how running the ball 11 times over the course of a game was going to make any sense whatsoever. They played right into Washington's hands. Like, I know people think that Washington's pass defense isn't great.
yeah.
They're top 10 pass defense. It's the run defense that's been a problem. And Tennessee, the score got away from them, and then they got away from the run, and they were playing right into Washington's hands the whole way.
No, it was, and the Pollard had that fumble earlier that kind of helped also get us another touchdown, put us ahead of them. And you mentioned the score getting away from them, but at one point it was 28-10. So now the run game can be a part of the.
They got it to 28-13. It was the third quarter, and I'm like, I turned to you and I go, "This is a 2-score game."
Right. Yeah, can get the run game back into the mix, but the defense, to their credit, I thought they did an excellent job not allowing Tony to have those explosive type of runs, which he had been doing. He had 119 yards a week ago against the Houston Texans, and he's an explosive player. He broke tackles, he made people miss, but they didn't allow him to get going. Didn't allow Levis to really get going either.
No, I thought they did a very good job unsettling him. He's someone that holds the ball a little too long, is apt to make mistakes early in the season, kind of like low-light cartoonish type turnovers. He hadn't had those in recent weeks, but over the last few weeks since he got the starting job back, his passer rating was like 110. He was coming off a 275 2-touchdown game and a win over Houston. Like, he was playing his best ball. And Washington's defense really unsettled him early and often in that game.
One of the things that I noticed, even in these 3 games where his QB rating was a lot higher, he had been sacked 20 times. You mentioned him holding on to the football for a long period of time. He was a lot of times you take away his first read, if it wasn't there, his natural inclination was to look to bail from the pocket. He wasn't going to go through progressions, especially if you're playing zone coverage. That really hurt him in terms of not wanting to throw footballs into tight windows. There were times where he did that against us. We had him on a sack on a 3rd and I think 20 play, and he was able to avoid that. And he hit Ridley right before the half that allowed them to get their first points of the ball game, that touchdown eventually. But thing about Will Levis, he does hold on to the ball a long period of time, and that's something they're going to have to coach up out of him. You're going to have to be able to, if it's one thing to hold on to the ball, but at least be holding on to the ball and making quicker decisions, going to your reads a lot quicker. But he did have a couple of nice throws too, where it's like he layered the football over some defenders and made some nice throws, and so. He had a couple moments in that game, but not enough. Not enough to win.
Frankie Louvu, Dante Fowler, they may have taken a sack away because of a play, but they're both right on the cusp of 9+ sacks, so they both could end up double-digit sacks easily by the end of the season. The last time that's happened, 9+ is 2016, Ryan Kerrigan and Trent Murphy. So remember at the beginning of the year when everybody said, where's pass rush going to come from? Where the sack's going to come from? They don't have prominent pass rushers, obvious, like double-digit sack guys. Joe Witt and company have figured it out this year.
They have, and they've figured it out through scheming up guys, bringing 5 a lot, blitzing Frankie and Bobby through the A gaps and doing some what would you call cross dogs, and Dante Fowler. They mentioned the work that he's done with Ryan Kerrigan and how Ryan Kerrigan, who you just talked about, my former teammate, who's just a great pro. Franchise's all-time leader in sacks, is teaching him and really emphasizing how to finish on a quarterback, how to continue to bend, how to do those things. And Fowler's been tremendous, for us. And there was some concern, like, okay, who's going to be the pass rusher? And those 2 guys have done it consistently throughout the season.
When they signed him, because we'd played him in Dallas under that defense for the last couple of years, I'm like, he's a dangerous player, but he's a situational player. Not for this team. He's been a full-time, dangerous pass rusher for for them. Probably a little more out of necessity that they needed
Right,
him.
they had some
maybe
injuries,
to
too.
Dallas. Dallas has they had Dorrance Armstrong and they had DeMarcus Lawrence and they had Micah Parsons. So they didn't need him out on the field as often as this team needs him out on the field, but he has really stepped up this year.
The injury situation, I think Farrell was injured and Dorrance missed a couple games, if memory serves me correctly. So that aided in Dante playing a lot more snaps than he did a season ago with Dallas. But also, it's just one thing to play a lot more snaps, but what are you doing with those snaps? And he took advantage of those snaps. He was making an impact. There was games, man. At one point, what it was 7 or 8 sacks in 7 games, So just like constantly, and even yesterday.
And he was hurt early, and people forget this part. At the end of camp, he was hurt a little bit. I think it took him a couple weeks to feel healthy before he got into the season.
And even yesterday, he made impactful plays.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't get the sack. They took one away from him, but he still had an impact on the game.
I've been workshopping nicknames for him, so we'll see. I'll let you know off air.
Yeah,
how it goes. I'm working shop. I got one for him that I like.
Watch you mention him here.
I'll give you one.
Let the fans
I'll give you one.
see what they like. Give us 2.
Well, I only have really one that I like. The others I didn't like so much. This one, I've been working on Luvu too. We got to get a nickname for him because he's ridiculous. But for Fowler, so like, you never know where he's coming from, right? Like he's come up the middle, around the edge. He's always kind of like
I kind of got what you were about to say.
Yeah, he's always like he's in your nightmares. He's always going to show up somewhere when you least expect it. He's the boogeyman. So that's what I've been workshopping on him. But I want him to like that before I would actually use it. So I'm actually glad we're doing this here because like I see he's like the guy who. You never know where he's coming from. He just kind of shows up. Sometimes we're calling these plays. I can't believe he's where he is. Like when he shows up and makes the play on the quarterback.
You said it's for Fowler.
Fowler, yeah.
I think that's more suitable for Luvu.
So I think Luvu, there's some kind of like lightning quickness thing that fits more for him. So I've been thinking about him too, but there's something about like the energy and the lightning that I want to like lean into. I like the boogeyman for Fowler because you just never know where he's coming. He's in your nightmares. You don't know where he's coming from.
Let's let the viewers chime in.
Yeah, if they hate it, tell me.
Do y'all like the boogeyman?
Yeah, the boogeyman.
For Fowler.
Yeah, for Fowler.
If you can, what nickname would you give for Louisville?
Yeah, we need a good one for. There's something about his quickness though that I want to kind of, and the energy he brings that I want to kind of lean into it. I haven't found anything I like yet, so I'll have to see. We take suggestions though.
Question for you. You're a smart guy.
Thank you.
The Alchemist. What would that be appropriate for? Like
the Alchemist?
Yeah,
you just want to say that?
No, I'm asking.
Yeah. Right.
You familiar with the book Alchemist?
Yeah.
What would
the guy who mixes the formulas and comes out with the whatever serum that kills everybody?
Yeah.
Let's see. Right.
Is Louisville the Alchemist?
Maybe. That sounds more like Dan Quinn, who's the Alchemist, putting it all together.
Kingsbury.
Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah, that seems like a coaching one. We'll put that one into it. So.
Okay.
All right. So we hit the bye week. I think it goes without saying they needed to win. It feels really good the way they won.
Yeah.
For sure. Like that it wasn't just I was going to be happy with no style points. Let's just end this losing streak, get back on track. Everybody feel good about themselves. Well, this is different. This feels like the week 4 Commanders as opposed to the one that's been kind of getting through the last month or so. So it feels really good as they turn the corner here. What's important for them over the next week as they take a little time off?
Continue to get healthy. This week, I'm assuming the guys will have the majority of the week off, but still stay locked in as much as possible. Take some time, get away from it, but understand when you come back. Don't look at it as, hey, we got a 4-game run, all these types of things. Look at it as, let's prepare to go into a hostile environment against the New Orleans Saints. First and foremost, how can we continue to build off what we just did against the Tennessee Titans? Can we take this show on the road? And what are the things we had a great outing, offensive, defensively. Some things we need to shore up from a special team standpoint. And there's some things that even within the win that we can do better.
Yeah.
Let's sharpen our tools, get ready to go down to New Orleans. It's gonna be a tough environment, and take that game that we just had against the Tennessee Titans and build upon that against a New Orleans Saints team they're going to be tough.
I would like to see how they think about kick returns now that Eckler's out for at least a few more weeks because he's been extremely productive on kick returns. He was top 5, averaging almost 30 yards per return. They were getting pretty good field position. Yesterday was a sign of they miss him. So I want to see how they think about kick returns moving forward here as well over the last month of the season as one thing to probably look at and try to improve because the field position on the traditional kickoffs wasn't as good as it had been with Eckler, who had been exceptional in this new kickoff.
Field goal kicker.
Yes.
It's Zane Gonzalez. He had been pretty consistent, pretty accurate, but yesterday he had a rough outing. Is that something you just chalk it off to? Hey, he had a bad day, or do we need to make a move there? Those are things that they'll definitely spend some time on and try to figure out, and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, Austin Seibert is on IR, so he has to miss at least 3 more games.
Right.
So he can't come back for the next few weeks. As for the Saints, I mean, it's kind of hard to know what you're going to get because they fired their coach in the middle of the season. There's always it either goes the wrong way or it bumps up. And it bumped up for them, actually. They were playing better, closer to what they were at the beginning of the season. They lost at home to the Rams, but they were very competitive in it. So things have kind of straightened out, and they have explosive players on that team. Derek Carr can light it up. Alvin Kamara can light it up. I mean, there are explosive, and that's a very tough place to play. Yeah.
Marquez Valdez-Scantling,
yes.
He has 4 touchdowns in 4 games for them. But they did just lose their Swiss Army knife potentially for the season, and Taysom Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we don't know, if that's going to be the case. But I remember seeing something yesterday where they mentioned him potentially being lost for the season. So we'll see. It's like you said, they got some players and some explosive players at that.
They do, and that's Fun Stadium, too. It's a great place to play. You think, our fans were terrific yesterday. Their fans always show up dressed up, ready to go. It's great
lathered up.
Yeah, considering how cold it is right now, you want to fly down and go root the team on down there. You'll have a good time in New Orleans. Trust me on that. And the stadium's an amazing experience. Let's talk about the playoffs a little bit. I know this team likes to stay locked in, but 4 games to go. If the season ended today, they'd be in. The path has gotten a little narrower because Philadelphia just won't lose to anybody. I was hoping for some help from Baltimore yesterday. We didn't get it. Philadelphia hasn't lost in 2 months. They're really rolling right now. Obviously, Washington will get another shot at them in a few weeks, but it may not be enough because they need to lose a couple more times to give Washington this chance. So it's screaming wild card. Mm-hmm. I'm sure you believe it too, and I think the people in the building believe this. We take care of our business. None of the rest of this matters. But it's narrow now because the NFC North teams are all top 3 having great seasons. And unless they beat each other up or knock one of them off enough, the spot to get is the 7 seed. I mean, that's where it is right now. So Washington's got to either hope for the NFC West to remain really messed up and none of those teams emerge as a wild card team and there's just a division winner, or they're going to have to just kind of do it on their own and just get in that way.
I think you focus on what you need to do, focus on your handling your own business. You don't want to go into a situation where you're limping into the playoffs. You're not playing good football going into the playoffs. You got to get help from somebody else. We're in a situation where we control our own destiny. If we win football games, keep winning football games, we'll be in the playoffs. Where that ends up, whether it's 6th seed, 7th seed, 5th seed, hey, some crazy thing where the Philadelphia Eagles all of a sudden start playing extremely bad football. Maybe we end up as a 2 seed. You never know. But focus on what you can control, which is the games that's being played on that given game day. December 15th against the New Orleans Saints. December 22nd against the Philadelphia Eagles. December 29th against the Atlanta Falcons. And a to-be-determined date against the Dallas Cowboys in Jerry's world.
That's right.
Those are the things we focus on.
That's going to be a make-good game for this team. That's the one to remember. The one that got away this year.
You're looking too far ahead, Brian. Let's focus on the Saints.
I hear you. Did you think, because they are 4 games away, they are in the playoffs as it speak, if they go 2-2, they probably get in. If they go 3-1, they'll almost definitively get in. If they win out, they might have a shot at the division. When we broke camp, did you think we'd be sitting here and go in playoffs?
I'll say this, and I'm on record. When we did the Command Center show, we predicted wins. I think I had predicted us maybe about 10 wins. So
Yeah. All right. So you're saying, yeah.
pretty much. I
That-
might even said 11.
Yeah.
I have to go back and see
10
that.
would be dependent on Philadelphia and Dallas.
Right.
May or may not win a division, but definitively would be the playoffs. Philadelphia
I
clearly
thought
ain't gonna be
I'd
10.
say this. I thought Philadelphia was going to win our division. I thought they had the best football team, most talent, top to bottom.
Yeah.
So
And Saquon is streaking towards,
Mm-hmm.
at bare minimum, Offensive Player of the Year, and I'd argue MVP.
yeah,
The
he
way
is.
they're going.
He is.
Yeah, the way they're going right now. All right. After what you saw yesterday, which was closer to the beginning of the season, which I think was a little surprising how good it was at the beginning of the year, is there room to improve?
There's always room to improve.
In what way?
You anytime you win a game, lose a game, you're going to always look at how can we continue to improve. Maybe there's some points left out on the board. There's from an individual standpoint, can I block a little bit better? Can I catch a little bit better? Can I do something better?
They should have had 2 more turnovers yesterday. Yeah.
Defensively, you allowed the Tennessee Titans to score right before the half to give them some momentum. What can we do to shore up not giving up the bigger plays, the plays that we gave up in the passing game? So there's always room to improve, regardless of how you won and how many you won by. That's the mentality. You got to continue to improve.
There were 2 turnovers left on the field, too.
Yeah.
Noah Benogany
So,
should have had his first interception. Jeremy Chin had one, too.
Get some more interceptions.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, but it feels good going into the bye off a win, and a win like that
Yeah,
more than
absolutely.
anything. A win like that.
Absolutely.
All right, what are you doing for the bye week?
Shit, I don't know. I'm relaxing, man. I'm trying to get my life together. It's been I'm finally getting a chance to be at home with my kids for a full week. So, yeah.
You had quite a weekend. London over here
I did.
went to the Michigan-Ohio State game, didn't get maced, showed up the next day, went to the Tennessee-Washington game,
Yeah.
and then that night goes and gets into the Christmas spirit by seeing Mariah Carey. Well,
Hey,
you
man.
shoved it all in one weekend, man.
Hey, man, I'm just living a dream, man, I guess. I don't know.
That was Mariah. Good?
They played ODB. It was a good night.
All right. All right, everybody. That'll do it for the booth review. We'll see you after the New Orleans game.